Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon.
A few years ago, a college student named Eric took a night shift job at a Pizza Hut in a quiet suburban town. It wasn't the busiest place, and he figured it would be easy money, just making pizzas, cleaning up, and closing the store. But what happened one night still keeps him awake whenever he smells melted cheese or hears the ding of an oven timer. The store was supposed to close at midnight, and by 11:30 p.m., Eric and his coworker, a girl named Jamie, were just finishing up the last few orders. Around that time, a man came in. He was tall, gaunt, and wearing a heavy coat, even though it was the middle of summer. His face looked oddly pale under the fluorescent lights, and his eyes didn't seem to blink as he stared at the glowing menu board for way too long. When Eric finally asked if he needed help, the man muttered, almost under his breath, "I'll wait until closing." Then he sat down at one of the booths, his coat creaking as he leaned back. Eric and Jamie exchanged a nervous glance. Customers weren't supposed to dine in that late, but they didn't want to cause trouble. They just figured he was strange, maybe homeless, maybe drunk. But the way he sat there perfectly still, never checking his phone, never looking away from them, it was unsettling. Midnight hit. The man hadn't ordered anything, and now the doors were locked. Eric walked over to politely explain they were closing, but the booth was empty. No coat, no footprints on the freshly mopped floor. Nothing. Jamie swore she hadn't seen him leave, and the doors hadn't opened. They brushed it off as some weird mix-up, though unease lingered in the air. As they cleaned the kitchen, things started going wrong. The ovens would beep without anyone setting a timer. The walk-in freezer light flickered on and off, and when Jamie opened the door, she swore she saw a shadow move between the shelves. The security cameras above the prep station buzzed with static, but when Eric checked the monitor, there was a faint image of the man in the booth, just sitting there in the dark, even though they had seen it empty minutes earlier. Eric decided it was enough. He told Jamie they should just finish fast and get out. While he was wiping down the counter, he heard the front door rattle. It was locked, but when he looked up, the pale man was pressed against the glass, his face inches from the window, staring directly at him. The man's eyes looked sunken, like holes punched into his skull, and his lips curled into a grin that didn't look human. Panicked, Eric dropped the rag, ran to the back, and told Jamie they had to leave through the employee exit. But when they pushed open the door, a heavy weight slammed it shut from the outside. They tried again, but it wouldn't budge. The sound of footsteps echoed through the dining room, slow, deliberate, dragging footsteps like boots on wet tile. Jamie grabbed a pizza cutter like it was a weapon, and Eric picked up a rolling pin. The lights above them buzzed and went out, leaving only the dim glow of the ovens. The smell of something burning filled the air, though nothing was in the oven anymore. They heard breathing, raspy, deep, and too close. When the lights flickered back on, the man was inside, standing behind the counter, closer than he should have been. His coat was gone now, and his chest looked wrong, like it was sunken in or hollow. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out, only a wheezing sound that made both of them freeze. Then the lights snapped off again. Eric doesn't remember what happened after that, only that he woke up outside in the parking lot with Jamie shaking him. The sun was just rising, and the store was completely locked, as if no one had ever been inside. But when they looked at the security footage later that day, the cameras showed them cleaning, panicking, and running toward the back door. Then, for a split second, the pale man appeared on the screen, standing directly behind them before the footage cut to static. Neither Eric nor Jamie ever worked another night shift at Pizza Hut again. And to this day, the store manager swears customers sometimes mention seeing a strange man in a booth after hours, one who never orders anything, just stares.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 2.
Back in 2012, a Pizza Hut in Indiana became the center of a story that still unsettles locals who remember it. The restaurant sat off a quiet highway, the kind of place families would stop at after Little League games or long drives. Most nights it was uneventful, until one shift changed everything. A young woman named Rachel was working late with 2 other employees. It was close to closing time, And the dining room was empty, except for one man who had been sitting in the corner booth for over an hour. He hadn't ordered much, just a soda, and he never touched it. He kept his hood up the whole time, occasionally scribbling in a small notebook and glancing at the employees as they cleaned. At first, they thought maybe he was just waiting for someone. But then he stayed as the clock ticked toward midnight, long after the place should have cleared out. Rachel went over and politely told him the store would be closing soon. The man didn't look up. He just muttered something under his breath that she couldn't catch. She felt a chill crawl over her, but forced a smile and went back to wiping tables. 5 minutes later, when she glanced at his booth again, the man was gone. The soda cup was still there, completely untouched. Relieved, she went to lock the front door, but realized it was already locked from the inside. The other 2 employees swore they hadn't touched it. That meant the man hadn't left through the front at all. They checked the back door. It was locked too. Every exit was secure. That was when they started hearing the noises, slow, deliberate footsteps coming from the supply area in the back where no one had gone. They thought maybe he had slipped past them and was hiding. Rachel grabbed her phone, but when she tried to call the manager, there was no signal inside the building, something that had never happened before. The 3 of them huddled together, listening as the footsteps grew heavier, dragging across the tile. One of the employees, a guy named Marco, finally worked up the nerve to grab a broom and push open the swinging kitchen door. The supply room light was on, but no one was inside. The footsteps had stopped completely. He was about to laugh it off when Rachel pointed out something that made his stomach drop: the notebook. It was sitting right there on the prep counter, though none of them had ever seen him leave it behind. Marco opened it, and his face went pale. Every page was filled with messy handwriting, just one sentence over and over. "I like to watch them clean." Some pages had their names written at the top, as if he had known who would be working that night. Suddenly, from deep in the walk-in freezer, the sound of heavy breathing echoed out. Rachel swore she saw the handle twitch as though someone was inside pressing against it. They didn't wait to check. The 3 of them ran out through the emergency exit and didn't stop until they were in the parking lot, where Rachel's phone suddenly got service again. The police showed up and searched the building, but they never found anyone inside. The notebook was gone, too, as if it had never existed. Pizza Hut corporate brushed it off as a prank, but the employees swore they hadn't imagined it. Rachel quit 2 days later. Marco lasted another week before walking out mid-shift. To this day, that Pizza Hut still operates, but the night shift never stays later than they need to. Locals say that if you drive by after hours, sometimes you can see a man sitting alone in the corner booth, his hood pulled low, watching.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon.
It was a slow Thursday night at the Pizza Hut on the edge of town. Most of the customers had left hours ago, and only a few stragglers lingered over their slices. The manager, a young guy named Ryan, was closing up the kitchen when the phone rang. It was an order for delivery, an address that looked familiar, though Ryan couldn't place it at first. He shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was a repeat customer, and grabbed the pizza. The streets were quiet, almost unnaturally so, as he drove out. When he reached the house, it was an old, abandoned-looking place with peeling paint and broken windows. No lights were on inside. Ryan knocked, calling out the order, but no one answered. Just as he was about to leave, the front door creaked open on its own. Ryan's stomach sank. He didn't like being alone in places like this, but the tip was unusually high, and he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. He stepped inside, the smell of damp and decay hitting him instantly. The house was empty, eerily quiet, except for a faint humming coming from upstairs. Curiosity and unease battled inside him as he climbed the stairs. Each step creaked under his weight and shadows danced along the walls. At the end of the hall was a door slightly ajar, the humming louder now. Ryan pushed it open and froze. The room was filled with dozens of old pizza boxes stacked haphazardly, but in the center sat a figure, a man, hunched over, rocking slowly, humming to himself. His eyes snapped to Ryan, wide and hollow, and a low, gravelly whisper escaped his lips. "I've been waiting for you." Ryan stumbled back, tripping over the boxes. The man lunged forward with unnatural speed, and Ryan bolted down the stairs, heart pounding, barely making it out the door. He got into his car and drove straight back to the Pizza Hut, shaking and pale. When he told his coworkers about the delivery, no one believed him. They told him the address was abandoned years ago, burned down in a fire. Ryan never went back there. But weeks later, the manager found a pizza box sitting on the counter of the empty restaurant, cold and covered in dust. Inside, a note scrawled in shaky handwriting read, "Thanks for the pizza, I'm still hungry." From then on, Ryan never delivered late-night orders again, and sometimes, when the lights were off and the restaurant was empty, he could swear he heard humming coming from the kitchen.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon.
It was a Friday night, and the Pizza Hut on the edge of town was packed with the usual weekend crowd: families, college students, and late-night workers. Alex, a 19-year-old college student, was working his first late shift there, a schedule he'd agreed to because the extra cash was too tempting to pass up. The restaurant had a reputation among staff for being haunted, though management insisted it was just old pipes and bad wiring. Alex didn't believe in that kind of stuff, but tonight, even he couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. The night started normally enough. Orders were coming in fast, and the ovens were hot. Around 10 p.m., a man in a tattered hoodie came in and sat in a corner booth, ordering a large pepperoni pizza to go. Alex noticed him staring at the ceiling, muttering to himself. When he brought the pizza to the counter, the man's eyes were oddly dark, almost sunken, and he smiled. But it didn't reach his eyes. There was something off. Alex shook it off and returned to his station. An hour later, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, then went out entirely. The restaurant was plunged into near darkness, emergency lights casting strange shadows along the walls. The customers murmured nervously, but management assured everyone it was just a temporary outage. Alex and the other staff moved around with flashlights, trying to keep the line moving. That's when Alex heard it, soft scratching coming from the kitchen walls. It sounded like fingernails dragging against metal. He froze, thinking it was just a rat. But then he realized the sound was coming from behind the walk-in freezer door, a door that had been locked all day. Alex called to the manager, but she didn't respond. He approached the door slowly, flashlight in hand. When he opened it, the room was empty, except for the smell. It was a metallic, iron-heavy stench, like blood. There were no bodies, no evidence of anything violent, but the freezer shelves were smeared with something dark, sticky, and cold to the touch. Alex recoiled and slammed the door shut. He went to warn the other staff, but the man in the hoodie was gone. Nobody had seen him leave. When Alex checked the security footage later, there was a strange glitch. 10 minutes of nothing, then the camera caught the man standing inside the kitchen, just staring at the freezer. In the footage, he wasn't moving, but his mouth slowly opened and closed, as if speaking silently. Then, abruptly, he vanished. By the time the power returned, the customers had left, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. He spent the next hour cleaning, trying to calm down, but every time he looked at the freezer, he thought he saw a shadow inside, moving just out of the corner of his eye. The next morning, the manager insisted nothing had happened, though Alex was pale and shaking. A week later, Alex called in sick. When he returned, the staff whispered about the previous night. Some of the pizzas went missing, one said quietly. Delivered, but not to anyone, just disappeared from the oven. Alex asked for clarification. Nobody had answers. One thing was clear. The man in the hoodie had never returned, but his presence lingered. Some nights, the ovens would turn on by themselves, or the walk-in freezer would open without warning, and a cold breeze would sweep through the kitchen. Alex quit that job a month later, but every time he walks past a Pizza Hut now, he feels that same cold, iron-heavy smell on the wind, and he knows that some nights he might have delivered more than just pizza.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon.
It was just after midnight when Jake, a college student working the late shift at a Pizza Hut near the outskirts of town, realized he was completely alone in the building. The regulars had gone home hours ago, and the dining area was empty, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long, uneasy shadows across the floor. Jake had always loved working nights because it was quiet, but tonight felt off. At first, it was small things. The soda machine gurgled and hissed as if something inside it was moving. He shook it off as a plumbing issue. Then, when he walked past the ovens, he swore he heard the faint sound of whispering, like someone muttering under their breath behind the walls. He told himself it was just the wind, though the doors were all locked. A customer called in for a delivery, a request from an address that Jake had never heard of. Odd, but he shrugged and got ready to go. When he pulled up to the house, it was dark, the street completely empty except for his car. The house itself looked abandoned, peeling paint, overgrown weeds, no lights. He knocked and no one answered. Then, from the second floor, a single light flicked on. He heard footsteps descending, slow and deliberate. When the door creaked open, there was no one. But the smell hit him first. Rotting food, sulfur, and something metallic. Something wet brushed past his leg, and he stumbled back. Looking down, he saw smeared footprints leading inside. Footprints that were too small and too human, yet too wrong. Heart pounding, he dropped the pizza and ran back to his car. The next morning, Jake's manager asked why the delivery never arrived. Confused, Jake explained. The manager frowned, then showed him a report on the delivery system. There had been no such house listed. Ever. Weeks later, Jake went back to the restaurant for a late shift. Everything seemed normal until he walked past the storage room. Inside, pressed into the cold tiles, were the exact same footprints he had seen that night. And in the corner, scrawled into the wall with what looked like dried sauce, "You can't leave." Jake quit that night. But even now, he says that sometimes, when he orders pizza late at night, he hears the faint hiss of a soda machine, the whisper of footsteps behind him, and the smell of something rotten in the air, always reminding him that some deliveries never really end.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon.
It was a quiet Friday night at a suburban Pizza Hut, the kind of night where only the distant hum of the neon sign and the occasional car passing by broke the silence. Jamie, a college student working her second shift at the pizzeria, was alone in the dining area for most of the night, except for the delivery guy, Marcus, who came in every now and then to grab orders. Most nights were uneventful, but this one was different. Around midnight, Jamie noticed the security camera feed flicker. At first, she thought it was just a glitch, but then she saw a man standing outside the glass doors staring straight at her. He wasn't moving, just watching. She double-checked the front door. It was locked. Shrugging, she assumed it was some local drunk trying to spook employees and went back to her work. A few minutes later, the sound of scraping metal echoed from the kitchen. Jamie froze, remembering she had locked up the prep area. Heart racing, she cautiously stepped in. Everything seemed normal, except for a stack of boxes she had left on the counter that were now scattered across the floor. The boxes hadn't moved before. Trying to shake it off, Jamie returned to the counter and answered the phone for a delivery. The voice on the other end was shaky, almost whispering. "I'm outside. I can see you." Jamie's blood ran cold. The line went dead before she could respond. She grabbed a flashlight and crept to the front door. Nothing, just the empty parking lot, the faint glow of the streetlights, and her own racing pulse. Then the intercom clicked. It wasn't the phone. It wasn't the doorbell. Someone had activated the in-store intercom, a system that only employees could use. A distorted voice whispered, "I'm inside." Jamie's stomach dropped. She bolted to the back office, locked herself in, and called 911. While she waited, she saw the cameras flicker again, this time showing the back of the restaurant, the kitchen door slowly swinging open, even though she knew it was locked. Then movement, the shadow of a man gliding past the prep tables. Every camera feed showed the same thing. The dispatcher told her officers were on their way, but the trembling voice in the office made it impossible to stay calm. Minutes felt like hours until flashing lights appeared outside. When the police stormed in, the restaurant was empty. There were no signs of forced entry, nothing stolen. The only trace of someone else having been there were the scattered boxes, the intercom still buzzing faintly, and the eerie feeling that someone had been inside, watching, waiting, and had just vanished. Jamie never returned to that Pizza Hut. Later, she learned that employees over the years had reported strange phone calls, intercom whispers, and objects moving on their own, but management dismissed it as pranks or stress. For Jamie, the night she spent there was proof that sometimes the ordinary, brightly lit restaurants you pass by at night can hide something far more sinister than anyone wants to admit.